Imagine a massive, a multi-billion-pound auto supply chain just completely grinding to an absolute catastrophic halt.
Right, just total paralysis.
Exactly. The assembly lines stop, logistics just freeze, the economy takes this massive hit, and, you might picture a highly sophisticated nation-state cyber weapon causing that kind of damage. But no, imagine it happening just because someone at a regional office forgot to delete a summer intern's password when they quit.
It sounds absurd, but it's the reality.
It really is. Welcome to Auto News Talk. For you and anyone else navigating the modern auto retail space right now, the ground is fundamentally rewiring itself right underneath our feet.
Yeah, dealerships are facing this massive convergence of challenges.
They really are. I mean, the actual types of vehicles you are allowed to sell are shifting dramatically. And at the exact same time, the government is cracking down hard on how you advertise the price of those vehicles.
And the great irony in all of this, the digital technology that dealerships are adopting just to survive these hurdles well, it's turning them into massive targets for digital extortion.
Which is just a nightmare scenario.
It really is. It is a complete structural overhaul of the business. So we're going to map this terrain together, walking through the hidden everyday mechanics of auto retail survival.
Yeah.
Think of this as a journey. We are going to start out on the showroom floor, looking at the actual metal on the lot. Then we'll move into the back office where the real money is quietly being generated. And finally, we'll navigate those invisible digital threats that, have the potential to bring the entire operation to a grinding halt.
Right. So let's start right on that showroom floor. Because the actual inventory dealers rely on is going through a really serious squeeze.
A massive, yeah.
Dealers are facing these sudden gaps in what they can even offer to customers. There's one report covering Honda's manufacturing plans that really highlights this. It shows that automakers are taking some pretty drastic measures to meet tightening emissions standards, and it is completely altering the flow of dealer inventory.
The disruption is so tangible. I mean, the report details how Honda is actually pausing production of the Ridgeline pickup for about 18 months.
Wow, 18 months for a major truck.
Yeah, and when it eventually returns, the vehicle is going to be completely transformed, the current V6 engine. That'll be gone. It's going to be replaced by a newly designed V6 that is paired with a dual-motor hybrid system. And here is the real kicker. This hybrid setup actually replaces the traditional transmission entirely.
Wait, pause right there. It removes the transmission entirely.
Entirely.
How does a truck even shift gears or, manage towing without a traditional transmission?
That's the brilliant mechanical shift outlined here. So in this kind of dual-motor setup, the electric motors take over the torque management completely.
Okay.
Essentially, the gas engine acts more like a highly efficient generator at certain speeds, while the electric motors handle the actual propulsion and, power delivery to the wheels. There are literally no traditional gears to shift.
That is wild.
It is. And along with the significant next-generation facelift, the manufacturer projects this new hybrid setup will yield about a 10% better full-throttle performance and a massive 30% increase in efficiency.
So it's faster off the line and burns a third less fuel. I mean, that's a great selling point for the consumer.
Exactly.
But this isn't just an isolated experiment for one single truck model, right?
Oh, far from it. This new engine architecture is expected to eventually replace the engines in the Pilot, the Passport, the Odyssey, and the Acura MDX. So it's a fleet-wide overhaul.
Right. So if you're managing a dealership, the implication here is that you are losing a key vehicle, a highly popular truck, for over a year. It really proves that regulatory pressures aren't just abstract rules debated in government buildings.
No, they have real consequences.
Right. They are forcing actual physical gaps in new car inventory on the lot. Though I will say, there is a massive blind spot here for the folks on the ground. The one thing I'm still trying to figure out from this data is the exact start date of that pause and how it's going to impact immediate week-to-week dealer allocations.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
Because you can't plan your quarter if you don't know when the trucks literally stop arriving.
That allocation timeline is the great unknown right now. But if we pull back and look at the dealer's reality, it forces a massive operational pivot. I mean, if you don't have the new metal to sell or the margins on the cars you do have are shrinking because of these expensive technological shifts, well, you have to find the profit somewhere else.
Right, because the overhead doesn't stop. You still have to pay your staff, keep the lights on. If a dealer is losing their new inventory margin, they are desperate to make it up elsewhere. It's exactly like a restaurant making zero profit on the steak, but surviving entirely because they are marking up the wine list and the dessert menu.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. And there's a separate piece of industry research focused strictly on finance and insurance F&I and the used car market that confirms exactly that behavior.
Right.
With new car margins under such heavy pressure, the biggest earnings opportunity has definitively shifted to used vehicles and those F&I products sold in the back office.
The volume on the used car side is absolutely staggering. I mean, the research shows independent used car dealers are moving something like 9.8 million vehicles.
That's a huge market.
And it makes sense when you look at the economics. Average new vehicle transaction prices are sitting at over $48,000.
Which is just a massive barrier to entry.
Exactly. That price tag alone acts like a wall, pushing a massive segment of buyers straight to the used lots.
It is entirely pricing out younger buyers. According to TransUnion research that was highlighted in that analysis, 55% of Gen Z buyers now explicitly prefer used vehicles.
Wow. Over half.
Over half, yeah. So independent dealers are leaning heavily into this. And to maximize the profit on these used sales, they are adopting new standalone e-contracting tools and utilizing white label branding for service contracts.
Let's define that really quickly for the audience. White label branding for service contracts basically means the dealership is selling a warranty or a maintenance plan that is administered by a massive third-party company, but it has the local dealership's logo slapped on it.
Exactly.
It builds local trust while yielding really high margins.
Yeah, and the e-contracting tools speed up the funding process, so the dealer gets paid by the bank a lot faster.
Right.
The overarching strategy the research points to is that dealers must move away from just pitching individual specific products.
Right.
And instead move toward complete process consistency. Every single customer needs to see the exact same menu of options presented the exact same way.
And if you're wondering if that kind of discipline actually pays off, here is a wild statistic. The F&I profit per vehicle hit a massive 5-year high for public auto groups, averaging $2,501.
$2,500.
Think about that. Over $2,500 in pure profit generated in the back office after the price of the car is already agreed upon.
Incredible.
The implication is undeniable. Having a highly structured F&I conversation focused on risk management is no longer optional. It is the core survival strategy for dealers facing tight front-end margins.
It is the absolute lifeline. But executing that flawlessly across different regions is incredibly difficult. One practical hurdle the research leaves open is how state-by-state compliance requirements will complicate these sweeping e-contracting rollouts.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, a digital workflow that perfectly satisfies consumer protection regulators in one state might fall entirely short just across the border, which makes it very tricky for a regional dealer group to standardize all their digital paperwork.
Okay, so dealers are essentially cornered. They are squeezing every possible dime out of back-end F&I and used cars just to keep the lights on. But that sheer desperation has caught the attention of regulators. They are now putting a microscope on how dealers are getting customers into those F&I offices in the first place. Which brings us to our massive secondary threat, the transparency trap.
Oh, yeah. Regulators are watching the advertising like hawks right now. An analysis of Federal Trade Commission actions shows that the FTC is aggressively enforcing what they call all-in pricing.
All-in pricing, okay.
They're strictly demanding that the advertised price functions as a ceiling, not a floor.
The phrase "a ceiling, not a floor" is such a vivid way to put it. Let's break down how that actually functions in reality.
Sure.
It means if I see a car advertised for $30,000 online, that price can only go down, say, if I negotiate or if a universal discount applies. But it can never, ever go up through non-disclosed add-ons once I actually walk into the showroom.
That is the exact mechanism they are enforcing. The FTC sent formal warning letters to 97 auto groups to make this crystal clear. Yeah, and the rule is that discounts can only be shown in the advertised price if every single buyer qualifies for them.
Right, because I've seen this happen all the time. A dealer advertises an incredibly low price, but when you read the tiny print at the bottom of the screen, it assumes you qualify for a military discount, a recent college grad discount, and a loyalty bonus all at once.
Exactly.
Unless I am a 22-year-old veteran who already owns a Honda, I'm not getting that price.
And the FTC is saying that practice is over. Burying mandatory fees or those highly conditional discounts in the fine print will no longer protect dealerships legally. And what's really fascinating is that the liability is expanding. It's not just the dealer's own websites anymore. Third-party listing marketplaces are facing heavy scrutiny to clean up their platforms as well. So dealers are being strongly urged by the analysis to adopt a formal compliance program and aggressively audit all of their advertisements.
The implication for the market is profound. Transparent pricing is shifting from a nice-to-have customer service feature to a strict, non-negotiable legal imperative. The early adopters who embrace this transparent pricing will gain immense consumer trust, while the holdouts face severe regulatory exposure and potentially massive fines. But look, I completely get the theory here, but I have to push back on the actual logistics.
How so?
Okay, practically speaking, how does a dealer actually execute this? The open dilemma here is how a dealer is supposed to show a perfectly accurate all-in, out-the-door price online when tax, title, and registration fees change wildly depending on the local jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's the nightmare scenario for compliance.
Right. Because if I live just across the county line from the dealership, my final tax rate is entirely different than the person living down the street. How do you advertise one universal ceiling number when the government fees themselves are a moving target?
You are hitting on the exact pain point. It is mathematically impossible to do with a static billboard or a newspaper ad.
Right.
It forces dealerships to deeply digitize and centralize their pricing tools on their websites so they can calculate all those hyperlocal variables in real time based on a customer's zip code.
Makes sense.
But solving the pricing problem with complex digital systems creates our next massive vulnerability.
Right. Because to comply with the FTC rules, you need digital pricing tools. And to process those highly lucrative F&I deals smoothly, you need e-contracting. Dealerships are digitizing absolutely everything.
Everything.
And centralizing all that highly sensitive financial data creates a massive, vulnerable honeypot for criminals. We have an analysis specifically looking at rising cyber risks for auto retailers, and the central insight is almost shocking because of how mundane it is.
Yeah, it's not what you'd expect.
Dealerships aren't facing crippling cyber risks because they lack incredibly complex military-grade firewall software. They are getting breached because they fail at basic routine digital housekeeping.
It's rarely a cinematic hacking scenario with lines of green code raining down a screen.
Right, exactly.
Concentrated finance workflows. Things like pulling credit reports and processing massive down payments make dealers incredibly obvious targets. But the analysis points out that the vulnerability almost always stems from high staff turnover. When sales staff or finance managers leave the dealership, they leave behind unused credentials in the dealer management system.
Orphaned accounts.
Yes, orphaned accounts. And when you have shared digital systems across multi-site dealer groups, the blast radius of a single breach expands exponentially.
Because we're all connected.
Exactly. One forgotten password at a small satellite location can instantly compromise the entire corporate network. So the core solution isn't magic. It is simple, rigorous access management.
Right.
It means revoking credentials the very hour someone quits. It means enforcing least privilege access so an entry-level salesperson only sees the data they absolutely need for their specific job, not the entire dealership's financial records. And it means keeping data backups entirely disconnected and separate from the primary systems.
The research quotes Mark Rodbert, the CEO of IDAX Software, and he characterizes these attacks as simply business as usual for hackers.
Business as usual.
Yeah, they aren't writing complex code. They're literally just out there running automated scripts, hunting for these orphaned accounts left behind by former employees. It is the lowest hanging fruit imaginable.
It really is.
The implication is terrifying. A single ransomware incident targeting an old password can totally halt a dealership's sales and service operations. You can't sell a car, you can't fix a car, and simultaneously, the highly sensitive financial data of thousands of customers is exposed.
The operational disruption is total, but there is a very real practical limitation to this analysis. What this doesn't answer is exactly how much money and time these seemingly low-cost housekeeping measures actually require.
That's a great point.
When you try to enforce strict credential management across sprawling multi-site dealer groups with hundreds of employees constantly coming and going, it requires a massive amount of human auditing hours.
Right. Auditing all those permissions isn't free. It takes dedicated IT personnel. Which makes me wonder, is this just a localized problem for a sloppy local dealership forgetting to delete an intern's password? Or is this a structural flaw baked into the entire automotive industry?
It is entirely structural, and it extends all the way to the top. A separate report focusing on the massive global distributor, Inchcape, illustrates that the major multinational players realize the threat goes far beyond just installing new antivirus software.
Okay.
It requires fundamentally overhauling human behavior and deeply scrutinizing every single third-party supplier in their network.
So Inchcape is basically going to war on this.
Pretty much.
They are heavily expanding their internal cyber program. They are introducing a tailored multilingual cyber academy for their employees to standardize awareness across different countries. And they aren't just trusting their defenses either. They are running annual simulated red team attacks.
Which are crucial.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, a red team attack is when a company hires ethical hackers to aggressively attack their own systems, actively hunting for weaknesses before the real criminals can find them. And on top of that, they are completely overhauling their supplier due diligence.
And the reason a global distributor is spending so much money on this is because of the sheer scale of the threat. To illustrate the stakes, the report highlights a recent cyber incident involving Jaguar Land Rover.
Right.
The attack cascaded through the supply chain and caused an estimated impact of £1.9 billion on the UK economy.
Let's pause on that number, £1.9 billion. How does a single cyber incident cascade into a multi-billion-pound economic crater?
Because the auto industry operates on incredibly tight, just-in-time manufacturing schedules.
Ah, okay.
If a vital logistics supplier or parts manufacturer gets locked out of their systems by ransomware, they can't ship parts. If the parts don't arrive at the Jaguar Land Rover plant, the assembly line stops. If the assembly line stops, factory workers are sent home, shipping networks sit idle, and eventually the dealerships have absolutely no cars to sell. The ripple effect paralyzes the entire economic ecosystem connected to that manufacturer.
It elevates the implication entirely. Cybersecurity is no longer an IT department problem. It is a massive board-level issue.
It really is.
A single weak link in a seemingly unimportant part of the supply chain can cripple manufacturers, logistics networks, and local dealers all at the exact same time. The intent to fix this is clearly there from giants like Inchcape, but the one thing I'm still looking for is the exact rollout timing for these massive corporate initiatives.
Yeah, that's missing.
The report doesn't offer a set launch date for Inchcape's new cyber academy, and turning a massive corporate ship like that takes a lot of time.
It really does. So if we step back and look at the whole board, the entire journey from the showroom floor to the global supply chain, 3 major themes really emerge from the sources we've unpacked.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, there is a definitive, undeniable pivot to back-end profitability. As we saw in the Honda production report, OEMs are pausing highly popular models and altering inventory to meet emissions regulations. Because dealers are being starved of that traditional front-end metal margin, the research on independent dealers proves the real financial lifeblood is now found in used vehicles and aggressive F&I product sales.
Second, we are seeing a strict, non-negotiable demand for digital transparency, whether it is the FTC cracking down and demanding clear, all-in pricing without hidden fees, or the industry's push for standardized digital e-contracting platforms to ensure compliance and speed up funding.
Right.
The era of handshake deals and opaque backroom math is officially over. Everything must be digital and everything must be documented.
And third, we are watching the massive scaling of operational vulnerabilities. Moving to all these centralized digital systems creates an enormous honeypot for cyber risks. It scales all the way from the hyper-local threat of an orphaned employee account we discussed in the IDAX software analysis, all the way up to the multi-billion-pound economy-wrecking supply chain disasters highlighted in the Inchcape report.
But inside those themes, there are a couple of really brutal contradictions, catch-22s that the industry hasn't quite solved yet.
Yeah, the tensions are real.
Let's look at the pricing side first. There is a massive pricing tension. The FTC analysis absolutely demands all-in transparent pricing. Your advertised price is the ceiling. But if you look at how third-party online marketplaces operate, their algorithms almost always rank search results by the lowest visible price.
Well, that's a huge problem.
It practically penalizes the honest dealers who include all their mandatory fees up front because their cars look more expensive on page 1 of the search results compared to the shady dealers still hiding their fees. You are essentially being penalized for complying with the law.
It puts the dealer in a terrible bind between legal compliance and actual market visibility.
Right.
And the second contradiction is what we can call the tech tension.
Right.
The F&I research makes it clear that dealers must adopt fast, seamless digital e-contracting tools to process deals efficiently and maximize their profits. But as the cybersecurity data shows, expanding those digital footprints and creating those seamless networks is exactly what creates the sprawling, vulnerable honeypots that hackers target.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is. The very tool required for financial survival is also the primary vector for operational destruction.
So what does this all mean for you as you try to navigate this market? If there is one practical takeaway from everything we've unpacked, it's that the ultimate survival skill for a modern dealership isn't charismatic salesmanship.
No, not anymore.
It is rigorous operational hygiene, whether it is meticulously cleaning up the fine print in your online ads to satisfy the FTC, standardizing your F&I menu so every single customer gets the exact same presentation, or literally just having the discipline to delete a former employee's password the moment they walk out the door. Boring, rigorous operational hygiene is the only way to protect your profits and avoid total disaster.
The flashy technology, the huge digital screens, and the new dual-motor hybrid engines will always grab the headlines. But it is the invisible, behind-the-scenes operational discipline that actually keeps the lights on and the doors open.
That wraps up this segment of Auto News Talk. Selling cars isn't just about moving shiny metal anymore. It is about protecting the data, defending the back-end margin, and proving the price to the government. As you watch the market evolve, keep a close eye on how the independent dealerships adapt. The ones who master the digital paperwork without falling victim to the digital extortion are going to be the ones who dominate the next decade. And until next time, ask yourself, if someone looked at your dealership's digital footprint right now, are you leaving the front door heavily locked but the back window wide open?